Hi, everybody. Recently, Anna Marie and I, my wife, just got back from Germany, and I was asked to give a talk at the first conference, Dynamic Visions. And the talk I gave, it started out to talk about creating perennial plant communities, and it was about how do I pick and choose plants and put them together based on their growth from youth to maturity. And I got a little off topic and also talked about our future. And I have a lot of young people coming to Northwind and older people that say, Roy, how can I become a gardener? And that's what we're working on right now. We're starting school professional gardening at Yerkes Observatory here in Williams Bay, along with Gateway College. So it's not just about choosing plants to put together socially so they live well. It's coming up with groups of people that will find joyful ways to care for them and earn a living doing it. That's the best part. And it was super. I mean, the content, I did some videos with some of the people that were there. The content was good. It was all about thoughtful planting, regenerative planting, sustainable plantings, and some of the conclusions we came up with about how you care for these plantings also. And I hope you enjoy it. And it was really a good moment for Cassian Schmidt, who ran Hermanshof. He gave us his last tour. He's leaving Hermanshof. And he did incredible plantings there with plants from all over the world, actually, North American, Asian, and Central Europe. So if you have a chance, enjoy the video, and any questions you have would be super. Thanks a lot.
It's really great to have you all here. It's maybe half of the dynamic vision, and you are very privileged because this will be the final act here in Hermanshof for me, I think, because it will be the last guided tour, and it's quite emotional also for me. You have to mention it was the time in the early 80s or the late 70s when the family decided to transfer this privately owned garden from the Freudenberg family into a public garden. And the vision was here to present more a landscape, more a setting actually. So they designed these sneaking ways and made a lawn in the middle and the dense surroundings of plantings. But the budget was limited. So this was, and this is where we start, this was all lawn. And then I had the idea, if you are new, you think, oh, but what can you do? And of course I was in North America, and my vision was to bring these prairie plants into, because I had the feeling this is something new and this is something resilient. And so I made a plan. I made two visions actually. So one was mainly a kind of pleasure ground and a little bit of surrounding prairie. And the other one was the total, get rid of all the lawn. And so the old Freudenbergs, especially Gisela Freudenberg and Hermann Freudenberg, they were not really conservative. They listened to very modern music, and I said I have only one chance to present this. So I made a really ugly design, which are very conventional, and this total thing. And then I presented this to Gisela Freudenberg, and she said, "We take this one, so the radical one." So this was really, they gave me the freedom. They didn't know what they would expect, and they never really took it because it was very wild and it was very unconventional, but at least they gave me the freedom. So this is the history.
Hi everybody, we're at the Dynamic Visions, the beginning actually. This is a crowd building up. Very exciting. We're here in Mannheim. Let's see some of the people here. I always want to start with my wife. She's here. Anna Maria eats, snacking in. It's early. And we're walking around and you see there's Pete Otto in the back. Noel Kingsbury.
That was the main thing.
There's Adam Woodruff. Austin Eyeshine.
Yeah. What's your favorite plant? Yeah.
What else we got? There's Tom Stewart Smith. He's here. We're just going to walk through the crowd. There's Nigel Dunnett over there. There's Thomas. Thomas was an intro here. There's Austin. There's a big crowd. We've got a good group here to begin with. I'll fill you in later. Where some people pointed out was, look how much a concern is for turf here. You know, it's just not a concern. It's not a Scots world. We don't need the fungicides, the herbicides, the fertilizers, the irrigation systems, the mowing, and then the fertilization, and the chemicals that control dollar spot. And look at the lawn here. It's casual. People would say, oh, but it's so unkept. But it's at one of the most famous design places in the world. So it's time to rethink. Not that you don't need open space to lay on and play on, but you don't need all the additives, maybe, right? Do you need the additives? Are they healthy? And you can still enjoy it. Let's take a quiet walk through Pete's garden here at Vitra. And I'm not going to describe the plants to you. I think just a quiet walk to, it's the emotional feeling. And also think about the gardening. What needs to get done and accomplished, and what doesn't need to get done or accomplished, but the awareness of things. The biggest part of gardening is the awareness of the present and the future. On the wall. Right now it's very unique. I've just walked in, but I walk in with all of you and we'll take a look at, let's take a look at some of the books. There's a new one, Garden Futures, Designing with Nature. That looks interesting. The Seasonal Garden, Creative Planting Combinations, very cool. What's this? Oh, designed by Radical Indigenism. That's very cool. I'd like to thumb through that. But I think all of these are part of our practice. There's not one thing that we practice not considering everything else as part of our practice. So this is all valuable. I mean, even look at this mind garden. That's important. All of this is important. Look at this notebook. Isn't that cool? Okay. We've seen everything, and everything is everything. Everything has a purpose that we need to consider and be a part of, and yet make it our part of what we do to contribute. Hi everybody, Roy here. There's Hannah.
Hi.
We just drove to Vitra to see Pete Outoff's garden and to take a tour of Vitra. We came in an all-electric car, and we're actually plugging it in, trying to plug it in for a 40 to 45 minute period to recharge it. We drove for 2.5 hours from Mannheim to get here.
Yeah.
So we're getting it plugged in, and we're off to see the gardens. That's the way to plug it in and see how that works. So here we are. So I'll fill you in on some of the garden tours and have some discussions with everybody. Now we're up at the terrace at Vitra, and we're at Pete's garden from the 4th floor of the terrace at the visitor center. Hi everybody, Roy here. I'm still at Dynamic Visions in Mannheim. We just had dinner and I just met Nicholas. We had a wonderful conversation, and I asked him if he'd share a few thoughts with you about gardening and gardeners. Nicholas, introduce yourself.
So my name is Nicholas Tomlin, and I started my career at Longwood Gardens in Pennsylvania. And I'm currently living with my French wife in France, designing gardens now. And Roy and I were just having a conversation about how we got started and sort of how we got into plants and how we design. And we started talking about plants, and I started explaining how I learned plants on the job at Longwood, which was my real education. And I had a wonderful teacher who introduced the plants like they were people. And so we were explaining how it's so important to know all the different plants and to know all the little details about each plant. The 4 seasons, how they interact during the 4 seasons, how they interact over 2 or 3, 4 or 5, 10 years. And like if you cut them, what do they do? All these different things. Where do the buds come from? Do the buds emerge from under the ground? Do the buds emerge above the ground? Do they form the buds the year before, or do they all the new growth emerge to the same year? You have to know all these things in order to use the plants and see how they're going to grow together into all the different communities of plants as we're designing.
And that's helped you as a designer quite a bit.
Yes, exactly. So basically, my I worked at Longwood for 15 years. I was in the perennial garden for 8 years, and those years basically gave me all the tools I needed to start designing later in my career.
And you pass this knowledge on to young people that do some of the gardening for you for your projects.
Yeah. So we had an intern last summer. And so, as long as someone is helping us, I'm trying to explain exactly what we're doing in the projects and introducing them to the plants the way I see them. And so, yeah, it's a process.
So I got to ask you, do you think there's a bright future for gardeners earning a living into the future?
Yes, because it's such an interesting time. Everyone sort of sees this as a stressful time, but I see it as all these new horizons opening up. I'm starting to work with dry gardens, planting in gravel, using a lot of drought-tolerant plants. Where we live in France is quite dry, and so it's fascinating. It's opening me up to a whole new list of plants that I never had to work with, that are equally as fascinating as the plants I used to work with, although some of them are I still use. But and the changing, you have to just constantly see what's working, and okay, this is the condition I'm seeing. What are all the plants that can grow in these conditions? Okay, let's see how can we use these 15 plants, and how can we mix these together into something interesting. I find it a sort of fascinating time, and the fact that people are so open to naturalistic planting now, as opposed to 10 or 15 years ago. I feel like my clients are really open, at least here in France, are quite open to the idea.
That's true. You know what? Thanks so much for sharing what we had our discussion about. I'm excited for everyone to hear this. This is cool.
Thank you.
Thanks
Roy.
a lot, Nicholas.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I've got some really good surprise guests here today. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Yeah, please, Stefano.
Hi Roy, hi guys, Stefano Marinez from, I'm Italian, but live in Utrecht in the Netherlands.
And I'm Mauro, I'm Italian too. I live close to Milan, and I have a perennial plant nursery.
Right. And you got a program coming up shortly too in Bergamo, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Every year we organize this seminar at this international meeting, and Roy last year will be with us. It was great. But today was fantastic. Listen, you at this fantastic festival.
It was a lot of fun last year. So how did both of you feel about today? What kind of thoughts did you have?
I think it's just incredible to find this inspirational people that talk about exactly what we do and connect design with ecology and with the people working as well as living in the cities where the planting is so important. So inspirational talkers, great event.
Yeah, absolutely, because we talk from Brazil, from US, from England, so different place, different person, but same energy, very interesting. Absolutely.
That's right.
And also highlighting certain important things such as sort of maintenance, which we cannot call it, and we shouldn't call it.
That's true.
Maintenance, but rather aftercare or stewardship in how sort of to look after these plant communities. So it's an understanding of that, and then transferring to the actual people that they have it in their own garden, their own
And
cities.
that was discussed at a high level. A lot of conversation about care for
in a
plants.
different context as well, into cities,
Yeah,
into
in
private
private.
gardens.
And absolutely, and the question to maintenance or managing, and the subject is dynamic vision is really interesting because it's not just something that's static, but is interaction with nature, and that is, I think, is really great. What do you think, Stefan?
Yeah, I think this is what gardens are. It's not a piece of furniture that you just put there and it stays there, and the worst case scenario gets dusty, but it's actually something that does evolve, something that does going to require someone to understand what is that development that's happening.
And it's kind of a universal thought. Everybody's considering maintenance, not just one country or one group of people.
Yeah, and I think, as I was saying to you, Roy, earlier on, is sort of working with plants and understanding them is sort of accepting and dealing with change, the development of these plant communities from the year 2, year 3, and so on, and how this sort of comes together in the future years. And that's why sort of the people, not just designers, but people that work with plants in the parks are so important to make them come.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about the present of what we call width, and now to left space to this. So it's completely different idea from the past. And we talk about the new version of gardener. It's not just gardener like in the old with the old name, but is something that is ecological and then create habitat. So it's completely different vision than classic.
And I think one interesting thing that someone said several people actually talked about is how to engage the what we call a client or the people into looking after. So it's not just something that you look from outside from the window, but you actually maybe you do grow something as part of the planting. You do maybe look after it. You have a bit of understanding, and even if you learn something from it, it's still something you participate. So it makes it much more. That maybe the plant is going to live longer, and you engage with the owner.
You're talking about involvement, get people involved.
Well,
it sounds like this was an exciting day.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And you guys thanks for having the conversation too. It's really cool.
Thank you, Roy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
2, 3. Hi, everybody. I'm here still at the Dynamic Visions program here in Mannheim, Germany. It's been 2 days of fun. And guess who's showed up? And we're going to have a little discussion on what in the world they thought today was like. So introduce yourselves and what happened today. How did you feel about today?
It was great. My name's Adam Woodruff. I'm a garden designer from originally from the Midwest, but now I live out in the Boston area. I think it's really extraordinary to be able to come to a conference where you have the best designers in the world available to you. There are about 450 people attending the conference, and Tom Stewart-Smith is here, Pete Aldoff, Andy Sturgeon's in the audience. There are a lot of accessible people to walk up to and have conversations with and learn about plants, more than just what's happening on stage. We just had Bettina Jaukstetter sharing her work, a designer who is probably, in my opinion, one of the best in the world that very few people know about. So we're coming to a conference and learning from individuals who are really stellar. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And I'm Austin Eichscheid, and I'm out of Chicago, garden designer. And yeah, I just love coming to these conferences. The lectures are great, but even better is the conversations that happen between coffee breaks, dinners, drinks, all of the fun things come out, and it's just fun sharing, and you see how many different types of ways there are to doing it. So we're all at home figuring out, like, is this the way? And that's what everybody is sharing, is that there are so many different ways. So it's all an experiment. We're always trying, we're always learning, and it's great to see people at the top of their game doing the same, and that's why we're all here sharing, so we can just better the profession and our methods.
And sharing successes and failures. I think there's a real candor about what doesn't work, and I think that's a really good thing, particularly for younger people coming into the field. We live in this Instagram world where it's all glossy, beautiful photos, but that's not the reality of this work. These are living, dynamic, dynamic vision. These are living and dynamic gardens, environments, and they change, and you need to be actively involved and share what's working and what's not.
I think one of the big things I noticed when I was here is a strong topic in maintenance.
Oh yeah,
I think that was very
awesome
good.
to hear that.
Yeah.
Word, and so many young people, and it's so cool from 27 countries. Just everybody's
Wow.
eager, excited, and just wanting to share. So it's awesome.
So I like a bright future. I see a bright future
so.
in gardening.
Well, and paved by people like you, Roy, because Austin and I can both speak to your influence on our careers and the trajectory of our work. And
Oh, thank you.
You've been a real
cool.
inspiration,
Well,
not just to us, to a lot of people.
It's everybody. It's the team.
Yeah.
The team effort. All right.
Exactly.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Roy here. I'm still in Hermanshof at the Dynamic Vision Conference, and I met somebody very special and spectacular, and I'd like her to share with you what she's doing, who she is, and what the future possibilities are. So,
Hi everyone, my name is Mariana Siqueira. I'm a landscape architect from Brazil. And I've been working for the past years in discovering the Brazilian savanna, because Brazil is not only about rainforests and beaches, but it also holds the world's most biodiverse savanna that's right in the middle of the country. And it's a huge one too. It covers 22% of our territory. So I knew nothing about the savanna until I start gardening in Brasilia. And I wanted to use native plants from the surroundings, and then I found they were nowhere to be found in nurseries or in gardens. And that really struck me as something that made no sense. Then I started doing plant hunting and introducing some plants to landscaping. I was collecting seeds. I've been collecting seeds and growing them and experimenting with them in gardens and in more scientific experiments as well. And my whole aim with this is to raise awareness about the savanna itself, because it's so wonderful, it's so important, and yet so neglected. So I've been trying to use gardens as a means to promote the beauty of this place and also to present these plants to the public. So that's what I've been working on.
and you had one initial design too that you were working on.
Yeah, it all began actually when one client asked me a garden with natives. And it was my first commission. And I said, yes, of course. And that's when I found that I couldn't actually work with these plants. And then I went back to her and said, hey, I think that thing you want and that thing I said I could deliver is actually impossible. But I want to work on it. And she said, okay, how long it's going to take, you think, for you to deliver a garden? And I said, some 5 years. And she said, I'll give you 10.
Wow, that's unusual, but really refreshing to hear.
Yeah.
Very refreshing.
Yeah. So
And you feel like you were pretty successful finding the plants and creating the garden.
The Cerrado has 12,000 plant species.
Wow.
And
12,000.
12,000. And they're just wonderful plants.
Wow.
And we have been having success with cultivating them. And I've been working on learning this naturalistic approach, because I think it really translates. It can translate well the spirit of the savanna.
Yeah.
So I'm working on developing my own language to express these gardens based on the knowledge that we find with professionals, as Roy Diblik himself and others who are here at the Dynamic Vision.
Oh, well, thanks a lot for sharing this. This is very good.
It's my pleasure.
And I think you're creating a really dynamic future for yourself and for the people in Brazil who know nothing about what you're doing. So, okay, cool. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.